It had been a quiet night. Katie learned that under chance is a warm place to put your toes when he sleeps on your bed. Orbie found out that sometimes the night-darkened room feels like velvet. And they both discovered that even though Dad's alarm was noisy, some days it's easy to sleep through it. On that day, Katie and Orbie were sharply awakened by Mom calling to Dad. He'd slept in. Dad stumbled down the stairs, followed by two sleepy friends. Dad looked out the window and told Mom it was no wonder he'd slept in. He pointed to the window, and the two sleepyheads went over to look out. What was odd was that even though you used your eyes and tried to see the front yard and the house across the street, you just couldn't. It was gray and strange looking outside. Dad shuffled to the kitchen for coffee and called his office. Mom explained to Katie and Orbie that during the night, a fog had moved in. The fog was like a cloud that had sunk close to the ground, making the day misty instead of clear. Katie looked at Orbie in delight. They could actually touch a cloud today. This was very exciting. Mom was setting the table when Katie appeared fully dressed with Orbie in tow. She asked if they could play outside in the cloud. Mom crouched down, which meant she had something serious to say. She told Katie and Orbie that because of the fog, cars couldn't be seen easily on the road, so they must play in the front yard on the grass. She asked the friends to put on their rain gear, as mist can be wet. Katie and Orbie did just that and dashed out the front door. Katie noticed that, in fact, you couldn't really even see the sidewalk. They walked towards it to the edge of the grass, and when they got there, they could see the sidewalk, but they still couldn't see the house across the street. Katie wondered if it was still there. Orbie was sure it was, just like their house was right behind them. They turned to look at their house. Although you could see where the lights were on, you couldn't really see the rest of it. Katie giggled. Things were disappearing in the fog. Just as an idea for a game was stirring in her head, Orbie announced that he thought it was a perfect day to pretend that he was a sailor, lost at sea on a foggy day. He kicked a big empty box that Dad had left for the recycling. It was just the right size for a sailor's boat. Katie giggled. She liked the sound of Orbie's game. She was going to be a mermaid. Inside the box, Orbie discovered it wasn't too easy to move, so he opened up the bottom, sort of shuffled and jumped with his feet to get where he was going. Katie pretended she was swimming in the ocean. Orbie used an empty towel roll for his spyglass, and he scanned the horizon. He burbled that he was lost in the mist and couldn't find the shore. With a huge sigh that made Katie giggle, he tooted that he'd never see home again because he was so lost. And then he pretended to cry. He made a very silly sound and heaved his shoulders up and down. Mermaid Katie swam over to the sailor. He sat slumped down in his box and burbled that only a mermaid could help him now. Katie peeked over the top of the box and with a grand smile announced that she was a mermaid and she knew the way to the lighthouse. Orbie jumped up so quickly. He fell right over the edge of his box and ended up underneath it. Katie lifted the corner and told the sailor to follow her. Orbie righted the box boat and climbed in again. He followed Katie as she pretended to swim around looking for shore. She swam right by a tree that Orbie bumped into on purpose. This time, he flipped out and somersaulted across the grass, laughing. Katie glanced back as Orbie checked the front of his ship and burbled that there was no damage. Next, Katie swam toward the bicycles near the garage. Orbie bumped into these, too, tumbling box and all across the misty, damp grass. The mermaid, by now, suspected the sailor liked to bump into things. Just as she was heading toward the edge of the grass, a loud foghorn was heard. Orbie untangled himself and floated over in a bumpy, jumpy sort of way. When Tom came through the mist and Katie and Orbie could see who it was, Tom's foghorn sound changed to a chuckle. The friends chuckled too. Tom told the friends he was on his way to school, if he could find it. He waved goodbye, and Katie and Orbie waved back. Sailor Orbie was sure he was going to bash right up against the rocks and never get home. He did his silly cry again, and the mermaid asked the sailor to follow her and stop bumping into things. Orbie giggled and tooted that the sea was rough. As they circled back towards the house, Mom opened the front door. Light cascaded out into the fog. Katie shrieked that they'd finally found the lighthouse. Now the sailor was safe. They swam and sailed to safety. Of course, the sailor couldn't resist bumping into the steps and falling over. A big wave, Orbie burbled as he peeked out of the box. When they were inside again, safe and sound, the sailor invited the exhausted mermaid to come and have breakfast with him if she could stay out of the water that long. The mermaid agreed that breakfast would be wonderful, and she swam down the hall. When they sat at the table, Dad placed some of his very famous made-to-order pancakes in front of them. They both clapped their hands in delight. Orbie's pancake was shaped like a ship with a sail, and Katie's was like a big fish tail. Dad told them he hoped they didn't taste too fishy, and giggles and chuckles trilled through the house. After breakfast, Katie and Orbie went back out and played more mist games. In the late morning, the fog lifted and the sun broke through. The friends took off their rain jackets as the whole neighborhood cleared up. I hope when it's misty around your house, you'll enjoy playing in it. I wonder what game you'll make up. I can't imagine what it will be, but I do know that it will be great fun because any game with you always is.